Hey guys, this is Emily. It is currently 20 to 1 it is Friday, it is the due date. So I have tried to get videos to work, but quite frankly, I've only got my phone and that's not working at all and everything's gone to shit. So we're going to have to deal with this. So sorry about the inconvenience. So the application I'm reviewing today is HelloTalk. HelloTalk is a language exchange application that allows you to talk to native speakers and other students of the target language. This can be in the medium of speaking, listening, writing, and reading. Now the first thing I'm going to get you guys to do is on my summary page, there is going to be a link to a YouTube video. This is a demonstration of the HelloTalk app. So please go watch that first and then come back to my lovely recording. So now that you've watched the video, you might have noticed that the app is quite similar to Facebook. It's very social media-esque. However, this is more directed towards language learning. So this app has some more interesting functions. So we've got the translation, we've got correction, which is very important to this oral presentation today. Next, we've got transliteration, which is a very important tool for languages that don't use the English alphabet. So Japanese or Chinese in particular would probably be very good. We will touch more on that on the activities that I'm going to give you guys after you've listened to this recording. And finally, you've got the function to speak and listen to other learners. And as we're having so many technical difficulties, I'm going to ask you to be reading the summary and listening to this at the same time so you know where all of my references are from and you know what the heck I'm on about. Just a quick reminder that today's presentation we are based on the language German. On to the first topic. HelloTalk incorporates aspects of the language learning methodology, communicative language learning. It's a methodology that highlights the notion of communication as the core of language learning. In other words, learning through communication. Learners are encouraged to communicate with one another. According to Noonan, there are 5 basic characteristics of CLT. Number 1, learning to communicate through interaction in the target language. Number 2, to introduce authentic texts into learning situations. Number 3, to provide opportunities to focus on the process of learning itself rather than just the target language. Number 4, it enhances learners' own personal experiences as important contributing elements to the learning process. And number 5, it attempts to link language learning in the classroom with language learning outside of the classroom. We will be focusing on the points 1, 2, and 4. Number 1, learning to communicate through interaction in the target language. So this really touches upon the fact that as a social media-esque platform, you can really talk about whatever you want to. You get to choose what you post, what you want to learn, what subjects you want to talk about, that kind of thing. I'm going to waffle on if I continue like this, so let's move on. One of the interesting things that I've noticed about the people in HelloTalk is that when they're trying to say something in the target language, they will say their sentence, say "Ich liebe dich," and then underneath the sentence in the target language, they'll write what they're trying to say. So in this case, "I love you." So this really does set HelloTalk apart from most language learning applications and classrooms because in such situations you really don't have a choice on what you're learning. It's all set in stone. Number 2, to introduce authentic texts into learning situations. So in this case, I'm really talking about the native speakers of the target language, in this case German. So the German speakers will produce authentic texts because they are, in fact, German. This is particularly important as in the normal classroom and a lot of other apps, you can't really keep up with the way that language evolves. It is simply impossible to keep up with it. It's like that joke that one of our lecturers made in the linguistics courses. Once you make a sociolinguistic paper, it's already out of date. Language is exactly the same. It is constantly changing and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Number 4, communicative language learning enhances learners' own personal experiences as important contributing elements to the learning process. So in my opinion, this one really links to number one, because you are, again, choosing what you want to learn. You are drawing on your own experiences, and as it is a social media-esque platform, you're mainly talking about your own experiences, your own cultures, things that you've done, things that you want to do, that kind of thing. So again, this really does set this application apart from a lot of the more traditional applications or teaching practices in, a physical class. But please remember that every application and every language learning classroom doesn't just use one methodology. So this is just a really skin-deep look at HelloTalk and communicative language learning. The next topic that we're going to talk about is HelloTalk's use of corrections and giving feedback. Now, I am a firm believer that corrections are incredibly important to language learning. So in this case, we're going to be talking about corrective feedback, also known as negative evidence and negative feedback. And it really just means identifying errors. And we're going to be focusing on the written errors. But first, we're going to have a look at implicit and explicit knowledge. Implicit knowledge is automatic, accurate, and unconscious, where explicit knowledge requires conscious effort. So for example, I would say explicit knowledge could be perhaps vocab or grammar that you've just recently learned, but it's not really ingrained yet, so you still need interaction to make it implicit. And the hypothesis that I'm going with right here is explicit knowledge through time and effort becomes implicit knowledge. And we have a really good quote here by Guo, I hope that's how you say it. When explicit knowledge is not developed correctly, errors occur in output. And output is the language that we actually produce. And we can really see why this is important, because if your explicit knowledge is wrong and it becomes implicit, it's going to lead to some problems down the line, isn't it? This is where I think corrective feedback really helps the problematic explicit knowledge, because when you are corrected, it brings a really high level of attention to what has been corrected. So when corrective feedback is given to a learner, the learner detects, acknowledges, and processes it, which leads to a modified internal knowledge that allows the learner an opportunity to revise the previous output, what they've already said, and in turn develop a new hypothesis. And then from there, they can use that new hypothesis. And then if that's incorrect, the process will begin anew. It's like the circle of life. It'll start with the correction, the revision, the hypothesis, and then again and again until you feel confident or until you're not being corrected anymore. And then corrective feedback isn't the only way that knowledge will become implicit, but I think that corrective feedback helps the process of getting good explicit knowledge that becomes implicit, and it just really helps in the language learning. So I think that this is really important to HelloTalk's effectiveness as a language learning app. And another really important thing is that HelloTalk is an application, so all the corrections are easily accessible, and therefore it's very advantageous as a second language learner, as you'll always be able to look back on it. It's quite unlike a normal classroom when you're speaking and you get corrected by a teacher. You probably won't remember that, but in this you will. But we also really have to remember that there are different types of learners, and particular types of written corrective feedback may not be sufficient for every learner. So for some people, the initial correction isn't quite enough. It's not explicit enough. So using HelloTalk, you're able to message that person that corrected you, and you can ask for some extra feedback or just a better explanation as to what was wrong. But there's a problem here, you see, because a lot of the people that are going to correct you are probably native speakers, and we can't assume that every native speaker is necessarily a teacher. They might not really be able to explain it to you properly. And this leads me into my next topic. I think that HelloTalk is a very good medium for enhancing the language. I don't think that this is necessarily the best option for beginners. I think this is better for intermediate people. And part of the reason for this is because it is so community-based, so social media-based. Because, as I was talking about, these are a lot of native speakers, you're not necessarily learning the German that you would learn in a formal classroom or a formal language app like Duolingo perhaps. We have to remember that the German that you learn in such contexts as a classroom or a formal language learning application is that you're learning High German, I suppose you could call it. It's almost snobbish to a lot of people, and that Germany is so diverse. There are so many different dialects, and the culture is different between like Berlin and Munich and like Bavaria. So you just have to be careful with that kind of thing. So some of the native speakers might be from Bavaria and you might be learning their slang, which a lot of the people in Berlin probably wouldn't understand. So this is just one of the things that you need to be really careful with HelloTalk. However, overall, I think this is a really good second language learning application that will aid, support, and enhance learning. Sorry for waffling on, guys. I think I'm a bit over time. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sticking with me. I'm very tired right now, so if you have any comments or concerns, feel free to open a dialogue with me, because I'll probably be smarter after I've had a nice sleep.